It's amazing how recycling might change our lives. Millions of tons of slightly worn clothing are put into our solid waste system every year. Much of that waste is prime for creative makeovers. Our guest, Mary Malari, is a frequent guest and a makeover advocate. Mary, I'm always surprised at what ways you come up with to transform items.
For this show, I chose to work with tablecloths and shirts. First, a vintage tablecloth. This bistro-style apron started its career as a tablecloth. Inspired by aprons worn by restaurant waitstaff, this apron features a top-notched fold-over edge and side pocket.
So Green Makeovers, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Sewing Cabinets, hand-built in the USA by American craftsmen, customized for you. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing designs and Class A needles.
Fabric to sew can come in many unlikely places, and perhaps our closet with old vintage tablecloths might be the perfect findings for your next bistro apron. And Mary, you designed this out of this heavy-duty fabric.
I like a tablecloth, Nancy, because it's usually sturdy, and it has an interesting top edge with a notch in it, and there's a facing in the back I cut from another area of the tablecloth. And then also I've used another area of the tablecloth for the fabric for the apron ties. And then here on the side is a pocket. I tried to disguise it in with a print, so it's sort of invisible.
36 to 48-inch tablecloth squares, kind of during 1950s, you may find some of these. This one would probably work out well as you make one apron from the tablecloth because you have some little soil and holes in it, but if you had a perfectly preserved tablecloth, you could get two out of one.
Yes, that's right, and that's what we've done in our sample.
So as we fold this back, you're going to see that Mary has cut a tablecloth with nasturtiums lining the edges right in half.
Yes, so I will be able to get two aprons from this, and it has quite a good width. The pattern that is used to make this apron, you'll see, is a little narrower than the tablecloth. So you have then option to make the apron wider than the actual pattern piece, or cut it exactly to size.
Sure.
And then the other piece that we have also to cut, and this time we cut it from standard fabric, is the facing for the top edge. And if we enlarge the apron body, we of course need to make this longer as well.
So a simple little slit in the area.
Yeah, that's right. And so next we can look at the tablecloth apron in process, and we have partial steps here on this side of the apron.
So it's been pinned to the top edge, and you'll see it's been folded underneath along the lower edge. And Mary has begun to sew the V section and then 1/4 of an inch along the top edge.
At the extreme side, I have a 1/2 inch width for the seam allowance. And there's also the tie that's attached here in this step. So of course you'd want to double stitch over here to make this nice and firm. And then what you would do is to turn back the edges on this side of the apron. But I have a little surprise back here, Nancy, in that I have this time I hid the pocket on the back, and it's open here on the side, and so you don't see it on the front of the apron. You just see the stitching.
Now, during this program of Sew Green Makeovers, we're going to be using a lot of tie techniques. And if we fold this back, Mary, I think you can just demonstrate the tie size that you make and then how you quickly fold and then stitch.
Yes, this tie is just a long strip, and it is the one short end is turned under and pressed. And then at the top end, I turned under and pressed 1/4 inch, and then on the other end 3/4 inch. And then I overlap these and I stitch, as this sample shows, over the fold of the 1/4 inch top. And so we have a very simple and easy way to make a tie without turning things right side out.
Well, this series is called Sew Green Makeovers, but we also could be easily discussed as Sew Easy Makeovers because you've made things very streamlined.
That's right.
And we take one last look at the bistro apron. As Mary demonstrated in the opening, she was wearing it, and you tie it around, fold it under, and you get the nice little extra width here. But the beauty of it is the interesting display of a vintage tablecloth now in a new life as a bistro apron. Make this apron for your child's art class by using one of Dad's or Grandpa's shirt. A shirt cuff makes an interesting makeover detail. What was once used at the end of the sleeve is now an artsy pocket. Here's how to put it together. During this next section of Sew Green Makeovers, we're going to concentrate on working with shirts. And shirt fabrics many times are really great.
Yes, Nancy, and I use men's shirts because there is so much more fabric in them.
We can take a close-up look at the child's art apron.
We place this on a man's shirt front, and we leave the buttons and buttonholes in place. Then the cuff area of the shirt sleeve is the pocket in the front, and we add simple twill tape or ribbon for the apron ties and at the waist. And then, of course, it's reversible because I really like to make reversible aprons.
And the other side can be another shirt, or you can just use some fabric that you have.
I added a detail of the placket to the apron as a pocket here at the top.
So we're not using too much of the traditional fabric in this two-part series, as you guessed, but here we have quite a bit of yardage on a man's shirt, and the pattern that accompanies today's program. You'll be tracing off the child's apron and trace it on tissue paper so it's double.
That's right. It's a good idea to have a sense of the full apron. And the thing we need to watch out for are the button and buttonhole areas to avoid getting them right into the seam. And the pattern has a shirt tail outline at the bottom, but sometimes I prefer to use the actual outline of the shirt.
Okay.
And that may be just a little different from the pattern.
This is not tailoring. This is
Right.
making recycling items from something that was not going to be perhaps used again. Through the magic of samples, we have cut this out.
That's right. This could be a shirt, Nancy, from a loved one in the family who is no longer with us. It could be, so it becomes a memory gift for a child.
Now the pocket portion is cut from the cuff.
That's right. And the way I do this is to cut right below the seam of the sleeve placket, and I release then the end of the sleeve.
So the pocket size may vary depending upon how long the cuff
That's
is
right.
placed.
I'll turn this around because this will be now the top edge of the pocket. Now you see how this is flared, and we don't really want to have the flared action, so we do a little pressing and pinning.
Okay, so let me remove the paper.
And we place the pressed shirt cuff piece, and we turn under the edge. And then once this is pinned in place, we're ready to sew it onto the apron.
Now because of the buttons, we're using a zipper foot and stitching around the edges with the zipper foot all the way over so that you're not going to be guiding the foot over the button area. It's just a simple time-saving technique. Most of the techniques that we're using in this two-part series are just straight stitching.
That's right.
And not a lot of it. And then to quickly finish this, Mary has cut, this is an apron for a little boy. We have some Boy Scout print fabric, and you've made it the same size as the outer fabric.
Yes, except for the bottom hem. I wanted this to outline the shirt, and so we have the next piece with a hem in it that is just like the apron front.
You'd meet right sides together, and then we're going to sandwich some ties in the middle.
We have two 14-inch lengths for the neckline, and those will be placed here. And then, of course, the side ties at the waistline. And then this apron top goes over, and we sew up the sides, around the top and down, and leave the bottom open.
If we take one final look at the finished child's apron, you'll see that, as Mary mentioned, she likes to leave the bottom open, so she just sewed around all of the edges, and when it turned it right side out, in very short order, you have a makeover, a perfect art apron for your favorite child.
There's a wealth of reusable fabric in slightly worn men's shirts. Combine 2 or more coordinating prints or colors to make another Sew Green option. As with all the makeover projects, the sewing is streamlined, perfect for all levels of sewing ability.
We just demonstrated how to make a child's art apron. Now we're going to take this one step further and make the apron in 2 component pieces so that it can be for a taller version.
That's right. We have the details to point out here, Nancy. The top or the bib portion of the apron is cut off center from the shirt front, and we keep the pocket intact so we can use it. It has neck ties that close with Velcro. The skirt is from another apron, or pardon me, shirt, and then the pocket is a portion of the cuff from the shirt that's the top of the apron. And that for that one I just cut a small part of it instead of the whole cuff.
So to work with this, you need for sure certain 2 shirts because it's
Right.
reversible again, and it's nice to use a different color at the top and bottom just for fun and
That's
just because
right.
you can.
That's right. This is the pattern for the top, and we folded some back because we're adjusting it for someone who is a little shorter. And I always like to make also the double pattern so we can position the shirt front correctly for the apron.
And on purpose, the placket is off center. It's not dab in the center so that both plackets, the bib and the skirt section, do not have to be stacked one on top of the other.
On the back we have the same fabric from the back side of the shirt, and after sewing around the 3 sides of the apron top,
And inserting ties at the markings.
oh, that's important too, and then I'll press this seam so it's lying flat here on the edges. And I think now we're ready to turn this right side out.
Right, and it works nice to press one seam allowance toward the body of the apron and the other will be flat. So you don't have to get into those corners. So with a sleeve roll, you can do it just flat.
So we'll turn this right side out and show how the ties extend from the top. And we're ready now to insert this into the bottom of the apron, which we will also need to prepare.
Okay, so speaking of which, the bottom of the apron, we have the pattern doubled just as before. And when I fold back at the center marking, Mary has cut this again so that the placket is off center, is in the
That's right.
opposite direction.
That's right. Now here you can see on this edge perhaps that we've cut through the pocket of the shirt, and so it's not going to function, and it blends in, and I just kind of choose to ignore them and cut through them.
If you ignore them, they'll go away.
That's
and they
right.
won't be able to be used. So you've stitched the 2 side seams, and then what I'm just going to do is open up just the top of this a little bit for you so you can sneak in the bib.
We're going to put it in this way so the 2 button sections align, and we'll of course work to center this, work a little harder than we do here, but that will be lined up with the top edge of the apron bottom.
So we have the bib sandwiched between the skirt. Let's just kind of shake this through, and then you would simply sew across the top. The normal thing to do would be to stitch across the top, but we're going to do virtual sewing and just pin as if we had sewn across this top edge. You'd use a presser foot width guiding the edge of the presser foot along the edge of the fabric.
I also like to reinforce the seam over the bib top of the apron.
Make believe this is sewn, and we'll flip this to the right side.
One thing that we don't have on our sample is apron ties that would also be sewn in here, but this gives an idea of how you assemble the top and bottom of the apron.
We take a quick look at the finished apron, and you can see that with some top stitching you get final details. And Mary, I really enjoy the offset plackets.
That's right. It adds interest to the apron.
So another great way of sewing green.
Next, one of my quickest makeovers. Stitch this gift bag from a shirt sleeve. Insert the gift and accept the compliments on your inventive gift bag.
As we progress through this series, our sewing is getting simpler, but the projects are just as useful. And how clever to give a wine bag or wine in this bag, flavored vinegars, body lotion. What a great way. And use that sleeve.
It couldn't be much easier, Nancy. We start with certainly sleeves on a shirt, and we cut this about 14 inches from the end of the cuff. And we have next one that we've already done, and we've hemmed across the bottom. It's just a straight stitch across.
And it was turned inside out.
That's right. And you could stop here at this point and just have a flat gift bag.
But it does work a little bit better if you shape that lower edge, fold it into a triangular shape, and then measure 3 inches across the base. And here I'm stitching that 3 inches to form the gusset. And you do this stitching on both sides of the base.
It has a really nice shape then after that.
If this were flat, it would sit nicely. And then the tail, not the tail, this is the handle.
That's right. And this is about 10 inches long, and you can make this of the shirt or of another type of trim.
And if you wanted to do just the very bare bones of creating this, you could just make it simply straight across the bottom.
And this, again, could be from someone special's shirt.
Yes, what a great idea. Next, giving someone the shirt off your back takes on a new meaning when you create a shirt tail gift bag. A shirt back is the perfect fabric for this uniquely styled bag, all made with straight stitching. You just saw this bag when it was filled, and it has a double draw cord, which, Mary, is kind of a signature of yours, using part of the placket. And these bags will vary in sizes.
That's right. And you can see at the bottom, this is the shirt tail, and the piece of fabric is folded in half. I like to suggest this is a good travel laundry bag.
Oh, yeah. You can't get too much laundry in here,
That's
but
right.
just enough.
Right. Short trips. And here's our shirt tail that's just cut off. And we're going to bring the right sides together as we have on this sample, and we've stitched down the side, turned it right side out, and then stitched here at the bottom to just bring the shirt tails and have a bottom for our bag.
Because it was already finished, you didn't have to have a traditional seam.
That's right. Next, we turn back the top edge of the fabric, and you can do this 2 inches, 3 inches, whatever, and then we're going to sew 2 seams to make a casing.
All the way around. But the opening is going to be not done the traditional way.
That's right. We're going to do some reinforced stitching, and then we're going to make sure that our opening is strong, but we just cut through 1 layer of the fabric.
Now, Mary, as a textile major,
I know.
we'll let it go for a gift bag.
That's right. We're breaking a few rules here. And from the other side, now you can see here that I've run 1 cord through the entire circumference of the bag, and I have a bodkin inserted here, and this is a tool that I'll string the cord through. And this is much handier than what a safety pin used to be.
Yes.
And when we get to the side of the bag, we're going to keep going so that we can continue the ribbon all the way around. And this just really does take a few minutes of time. But the benefits of a double drawstring are that you can pull from both sides and you close the bag up in a real hurry, much better than a single drawstring. So here I'm coming around again to the open end, and sometimes you have to work things around a little bit to get the bodkin through, but now I have my ribbon coming through.
There we go, on both sides.
Yes.
So you can tie the ends together as Mary has done here. One last idea. We've used almost everything but the collar on the shirt. And Mary's idea was to make a dog collar. Here's our dog Lucas. And last night I put this on our dog at home, and my son laughed for about 15 minutes as Lucas was wearing just this dog collar. So portion of an extra large shirt, we just trimmed away the shirt and buttoned it on. A great usage of the whole shirt. I'm confident that I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to learn from experts. And today, during Nancy's Corner, you're going to meet someone who has combined fabric and handwork and beading to the ultimate degree. Please meet Lisa Binkley. Lisa, you have mastered the art of combining textiles.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
You're very welcome. And when I first saw your work, I gasped. And this work of art that you have on this piece is kind of like the beginner piece of yours.
It is, and actually I started out making the quilt. I had pieced it and quilted it and had it for maybe 6 months before I decided to go back and do some embellishment on it, and it just felt like it was calling for beads. And so what I did was took advantage of the fact that it's a larger scale piece as embellished quilts go, and did things like worked in some of these kind of unusual large lizard buttons, which were very fun to incorporate, and then also added some smaller beads, like you can see in this area. There's fairly dense beading here, and I tried to play up both the piecework lines with things like these bugle beads, and then also the quilting lines with things like the butterflies or even the little flowers. It was a great kind of a sampler to put together lots of different techniques.
And you mentioned to me that you had pieced this and had it finished for a long time.
Right, I did. And I've done that with a couple of quilts where I'll finish it and then decide later on to add some detail.
So if you are looking to start beadwork, this would be a perfect thing to do, add embellishment to something already existing.
Absolutely, yeah. And just maybe start with kind of a small quilt, but...
Pot holder.
Yes, or a pot holder. That'd be great.
Here we have, this piece is called Passing Through. And you've used a leaf, a fall leaf as a template.
Right. I have a big, large dog, and we go for walks a lot and collect leaves, and so I make templates out of those. And so this larger oak leaf was from a template that I had made, and then this was a cottonwood leaf, and did a mixture of thread embroidery with some hand-dyed silks and then the bead embroidery on there.
And Lisa, you made the fabric background, binding it, did all the sewing work first.
I did.
And then added the embellishment.
I did, and I like to do that because, you know, when you're adding beads, you're pulling pretty hard on the thread.
Yes.
So the batting and the backing gives it some body, and it just makes it more stable so that it won't bunch up. I do know some bead workers who will bead the top of the quilt and then put it all together, but I've always done it this way, and it's worked really well for me.
It's very substantial. And speaking of needles and thread, there is thread specifically designed for beadwork.
There is. It's a nylon thread, so it's very strong, but it's very fine. And because sometimes the edges on the beads will be a little bit jagged, it helps to use the nylon thread to keep it from cutting it.
And then you're going to be using a sharp needle.
Exactly. So I'll use sharps, you know, size 10, or for smaller beads, a size 12.
Okay. Now we have one frame print coming up next called Riding the West Wind.
Right.
And describe that. That's a beautiful piece, small
Thank you.
fabric, but made impressive.
Thank you. Well, it's a fairly simple piece technically because I pieced the fabrics together. The leaves are just fused on, so it's a raw edge applique. And then I went in and did hand embroidery. The whole background is hand embroidered with a variegated, kind of a fine hand-dyed cotton thread. Then the vein lines on the leaves are a thicker hand-dyed pearl cotton, and did the bead embellishment on top of there.
Spectacular. I like your presentation too.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. You know, I think the framing is a nice way to go. It gives it some breathing room. It makes it not look like a fancy pot holder that's just hanging on the wall, and I think that it makes for kind of a finished presentation.
Well, now we've started with maybe a first project with something that you've added some embellishment, then a density, then we went to something framed, and now the beautiful piece behind us.
Oh, thank you. This was really a very fun piece to make, and I do get a lot of questions about how long it took. My best guess is 500 or 600 hours.
But who's counting?
But who's counting, right? But you know, I think one of the things that's great about beadwork is it's a very meditative process, and so it was just, you know, I tend to focus more on the process. On this piece, I had a template I had made of the basic outline of the shell and the turtle that I sewed down, and then began stitching the beads and threads on top of there.
And you have beautiful work around the edges. Just you said it was like a sampler quilt.
Really, very much like a sampler in that there were some white dots on the fabric, and I tried to stitch beads on each of those slightly differently so that no two are exactly alike, just sticking with blues and greens and browns. And I learned a lot of technique while I was making it.
Lisa, you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
Inspiration to add a small amount of beadwork or a large amount to our textiles and work. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
And a special thanks to Mary Malari for joining us during this two-part series on Sew Green makeovers. We've learned from Lisa, from Mary, and I'm hoping that you will apply these techniques at home. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.
Mary Malari's Sew Green Makeovers pattern serves as the reference for this two-part series. It's $11.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the pattern, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2312. Order item number MP25, Sew Green Makeovers. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. For more Sew Green Makeovers with Mary Malari, go to sewingwithnancy.com. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Cabinets, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Classe Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.